Folks, I keep walking around these neighborhoods and I keep finding big Wall Street companies buying up homes and then trying to rent them out. And in this case, folks, these Wall Street companies are actually having to cut the rent by a lot. And it looks like they might have made a big mistake by buying some of these homes. It looks like they might have overpaid for them. And in this video, I'm going to give you guys an update on what's going on with Wall Street and the housing market and show you some examples of how Wall Street investors now might be losing money in the housing market and how this could actually cause home prices to get more affordable for you in the long run. And right now, actually, I'm in northern Alabama in an area that's actually booming from a population standpoint. I'm in Limestone County, Athens, Alabama. The population here has exploded over the last 5 years, and investors bought up a lot of these homes and are still buying up these homes. Like there was a listing just over there that an investor bought in March for $305,000. It's a big Wall Street investor. They then put it on the market for rent at $22.50 a month, and they've since cut the rent down to $18.50 a month. And you have to wonder, like, what is this doing to neighborhoods around America? You know, in this neighborhood where I am right now, there's probably 7 rentals currently on the market, all between $1,700 and $1,900 a month for these houses, 3-bed by 2-bath, 4-bed by 2-bath. Those are pretty affordable rents, and they're still not renting. There's 7 of them on the market. And I was doing some math, and I was asking myself the question, is it even possible to make money on these properties as rentals, given where the rents are? Like if you were to buy one of these houses for $290,000, which is how much they're priced at on the market right now, and then rent it out for $1,800 a month, would you even make money? Well, if you use a mortgage to buy the house, you wouldn't make money. If you use a mortgage, you would actually lose money on the rental. You'd be paying more to the bank and to taxes and insurance than you would be getting in terms of rent. I think some of these investors are going to get flushed out of the market. Because here's a little tidbit about the big corporate investors that you guys might not know. And the tidbit is this: almost every corporate investor buys the house with debt, buys the house with some type of loan or credit facility or mortgage-backed security that funds the purchase. So when the investors make the offer on the house, it's often in cash. So on that house down there that sold for $305,000, purchased by Main Street Renewal, it's likely they purchased it in cash. So the seller is like, oh great, cash offer. But the source of that cash for many of the Wall Street investors, and likely Main Street Renewal, I'm not totally sure, they could clarify for me if they want, but is usually some type of debt credit facility where they have to make interest payments on it. And so these Wall Street investors are exposed to interest rates in a similar way that regular home buyers are. And the question is, how long can they own these houses where they're likely losing money after paying interest? Now here's another house for rent, everyone. This is also a Main Street Renewal house. This one, you can see the for lease sign in the window. This one was on the market for rent around $22.50, has been cut to $18.50 a month in rent for this 3-bed, 2-bath house. And you can see it's a pretty nice house. So, you know, this is a pretty nice neighborhood. This was, I know D.R. Horton was one of the builders in this neighborhood. I think there might have been some other builders, but like this is actually a pretty nice neighborhood. The lawns are mostly well kept. Some nice people that live in this neighborhood. I've talked to some of them. $18.50 a month to rent this house. They just cut the rent 20%. And you say to yourself, like, what's going on? If you're cutting the rent 20%, did you make a bad investment in buying this house? Are you making money on this house? And is it just gonna sit vacant in the future? Or are they gonna cut the rent further? Are they eventually gonna sell this house? Because no doubt, I've been seeing a lot of investors sell houses all across the US. You know, I've been filming in Florida for the last year, showing you guys lots and lots of homes that investors were selling. Here in Alabama, I don't think we've gotten to the point yet where investors are selling homes, but maybe we will in the future if the housing market here continues to turn down. Data on Reventure app in this zip code is showing that the inventory is way up and that the home prices are starting to go into deceleration mode. And our forecast for this zip code over the next year is minus 6% on home values based on the current data on inventory price cuts days on market. And what I would encourage you guys to do, especially if you're watching on TV, is pull out your Reventure mobile app and type in the zip code 35613. That's the zip code I'm in right now, 35613, Athens, Alabama, Limestone County. And you can follow along with the data. You can see the inventory on the market, the active listings are way up to around 250. It's gone up by about 300, 400% the last 3 years. I'm seeing that here. I'm walking around, I'm seeing a lot of listings on the market. One interesting thing actually about this neighborhood though, is the median income. The median income here, everyone, is over $100,000. And I think for, that could come as a surprise to some people. They would think for Alabama, you wouldn't be in as high an income area. The median income in Alabama statewide is around 65 grand. Well, here it's over 100 grand. This is actually a pretty wealthy area here near Huntsville, to the west of Huntsville, Alabama. And the schools are actually really good. Like, I toured an open house here about an hour ago, and I was looking at the school rankings for the open house on Zillow, and it was like a 9 out of 10 for elementary school and primary school, 9 out of 10 on the great schools rating. And so one thing is like interesting about Alabama, everyone, is that it's actually a low-key, good housing market. Like, it's an area that a lot of people are moving into. It's an area with good weather. And there are places that are wealthier and more educated, especially in northern Alabama, that I think in the long run could be good places to buy real estate. But the market here in the short term seems to be struggling. There seems to be that big surge of inventory that you're seeing in a lot of the southern states, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee. We're also seeing it in Alabama. But another reason why I like Alabama, everyone, is that its migration is still through the roof. Alabama added something like 25,000 net people in 2024 due to migration. In percentage terms, that was 0.5% population growth due to migration. That's better than Florida. That's better than Texas. Alabama is actually number 7 in 2024 in terms of how many people move there as a percentage of the population. And so, if I had to pick an area to buy real estate today, it would be in Alabama, I think. Because when I look at the metrics, I'm saying to myself, this is a market that's still growing. It's still pretty affordable. Home prices in the state of Alabama are only 8 to 9% overvalued. And the property taxes, everyone, are so affordable. The houses in this neighborhood, they pay around $900 a year in property taxes. $800, $900 a year. And then I've talked to some realtors and homeowners. The insurance is around $1,000 a year. So between your taxes and insurance to own in this neighborhood and to own in many parts of northern Alabama, you're paying $2,000 a year, less than $200 a month. I mean, I want you to think about that compared to Florida or compared to Texas or compared to New York or California. Your carrying costs are 10 times as much in those states in some cases, making it a very affordable option to own real estate. This is a great market actually for retirees. Like, if you're on a fixed income, this is a great place to buy a house because your ongoing costs are not going to be that high. If you're an investor, it's also a good place to go because your cap rates here in Alabama, the income you can earn on rentals is much higher. I was doing some math actually, and you can buy one of these houses, rent it out, and you can get around a 5.6% cap rate. Like, for instance, this house is currently for sale for around $295,000. If you were to buy it for $290,000 and rent it out for $1,800 a month, that's $22,000 a year in annual income. Your property taxes would be around $900. Your insurance would be around $1,000. You'd have probably like $1,000 at least in vacancy costs. Then you'd also probably have $1,000 in property management, maybe $1,000 in maintenance. You'd get about $16,000 in NOI on a house like this, which would be a 5.6% cap rate at the current list price. Now, I don't think that cap rate is high enough to be buying with debt. So if you were to buy that house with debt and a mortgage, your monthly payment is going to be much higher. With a mortgage, your monthly payment would be around $1,700 a month, including taxes and insurance. But if it's an investment property, you would have to add on the vacancy of $1,000 a year, the maintenance of $1,000 a year, the property management of $1,000 a year. You probably have to add on about $250 a month for your ongoing monthly costs, which would then make your all-in payment around $2,000 a month. To rent it for $1,800, it wouldn't be such a good deal if you buy it with debt. But if you buy it with cash, it'd be a much better deal. If you buy it with cash, your ongoing costs are going to only really be your property taxes, your insurance, your maintenance. Your ongoing costs would be about $400 a month, and you'd be getting $1,800 in rent. A much better deal, 5.6% cap rate. And with where treasury yields are going and interest rate cuts, now you're not able to get as much in a savings account. Like, savings account interest rates are around 4% right now. They could drop by more in the future. A 5.6% cap rate with no mortgage, if you have the money for it, could be a good investment, especially in a growing area like Alabama. The population growth here in Limestone County, which is to the west of Huntsville, it's through the roof. It's like 19% population growth the last 5 years. Like, this is one thing I want you guys to understand about Alabama, is that it is not what you think it is if you buy in the right places. Like, the general persona Alabama has is like, there's not a whole lot going on, there's not a lot of growth. That's not true. Alabama is top of the table on migration. Northern Alabama is highly educated, high incomes, great schools here. I think in the long term, this is a good place to buy. In the short term, prices will be dropping. due to the excess inventory on the market. They're now having to cut rent. So we are going to see a correction play out here, but it's going to be a healthy correction. A correction is healthy, everyone. And I want everyone in the housing market to understand this. If you're a buyer or a seller or a realtor, understand that a correction is good news. A correction means houses are going to become more affordable, and it's going to be more buyers will be able to come into the market. You're still going to be able to have growth if prices stay somewhat affordable. What you don't want is your market continuing to get more expensive, because it's going to choke off all the growth. It's going to mean new people can't move in. It's going to mean young families aren't going to be able to buy a house. So some level of a correction after how much prices went up is good news. I think in this zip code, prices went up 45% over 5 years. Let's give 10 to 15% of it back to the new home buyers, the new families who want to buy houses and who want to send their kids to school here. But I do wonder what's going to happen with all these investors, like the big Wall Street ones. Because on one hand, I just painted the picture of how this is a good place to buy in the long run. But it's not a good place to buy with debt right now if you're an investor. So I do think we're eventually going to see some of these investors be forced to sell here in Alabama, like they've been forced to sell in Florida, like they've been forced to sell in Texas. Because even though the taxes and insurance are low, many of these investors bought near the peak of the market. But what about like the general theory, like should investors be allowed to buy homes? I mean, this is a good question to ask, right? Especially after what happened during the pandemic. Should investors be allowed to buy homes, particularly the big Wall Street investors? Should they be allowed to come into neighborhoods like this and buy up multiple homes? I mean, Main Street Renewal has at least 3 or 4 houses for rent right now in this community. I mean, is it right for one owner to come in and do that? And I think that's a tough question. It's one that we should explore, because when I look at the character of a neighborhood, I say to myself, you know, a neighborhood with better character will be one where there's more primary owners and families living in the houses. Like, it's not great for the character of a neighborhood to have Wall Street be owning every 4th or 5th home. It's just going to be a lot of transient people moving in, moving out. Some of them might need housing, but if Wall Street had never bought these houses, maybe they would have been able to buy those homes at more affordable prices instead of having to rent them. And I'm normally more free market. I don't think the government should really be that involved with regulating who and who can't buy homes. But I think it's an interesting question to ask. I'm actually curious what you guys think. Do you think Wall Street should be allowed to buy houses? My whole theory on it is that Wall Street causes the prices to go up more in the boom, but go down more in the bust. So I don't know net in the long run if they really change appreciation that much. But in the short term, they can cause a lot more volatility in neighborhoods like this. And one thing we're especially seeing now recently is the builders are selling to a lot of investors. So the builder sales volume has declined on a national basis. Builder sales are around 620,000 per year annualized. It's a bit below where it was before the pandemic. It's about 35% below the pandemic peak. So the builder sales have slowed. What I'm seeing is more of the builders seem to be selling their homes now to investors, sometimes in bulk. And so that's another thing to think about, that the builders and investors are kind of teaming up a little bit. The builders will build more homes, the investors will buy them. In that sense, investors buying homes actually isn't the worst thing in the world, because if D.R. Horton or Lennar is going to build more homes to sell to investors, it's going to mean more housing supply on the market. It's not going to be a home for sale, it's going to be a home for rent. But that home for rent might not have ever been built if, say, Main Street Renewal or Tricon Residential wasn't in the market to buy. So that's actually a counterpoint to how investors buying homes and more capital coming into the housing market could be good for affordability in the long run. The question is, like, would the builder have simply built that home anyway and sold it to a regular owner, or would they have just not built the home? I think, if you want my personal opinion on that question, I think in the South right now, the investors are stimulating builders to build more. Because right now in the South, we have over 300,000 homes for sale. It's the most number of homes for sale we've ever had in the South, in the 17-state South. We've never had this many builder homes for sale, ever. And the market in the South is clearly declining. Prices are dropping almost everywhere in the South. On a month-over-month basis, on a year-over-year basis, more and more states are going negative. So why are the builders then still building so many homes in a declining market in the South? Maybe because they have investors lining up to buy these homes in bulk. And if that's the case, it's probably good for the housing market in the long run. What's not good, though, is investors coming into existing communities and buying up homes from existing owners and turning communities that were owner communities into renter communities. That is not good. But I don't really think the government should really do anything, especially the federal government. Like, how would the federal government actually be able to enforce any type of investor ban? I don't think they would be able to enforce it. And rather what I think like local municipalities should do, like this is what I would do. If I lived in Alabama, and if I was a politician in Alabama, and I wanted to reduce the number of investors buying homes, I would find a way to increase the property taxes on people who don't live in their homes full time. You know, we talked about how the property taxes are $800, $900 a year here. I would make it $3,000 a year if you're a non-owner occupant. Use the extra money to invest in the schools. I think that's probably a good way to deter investors from buying and force some of them to sell, is keep the property taxes cheap on those who actually live in the houses, but find a way to maybe increase the property taxes on investors and second owners. I think you'd be shocked at how fast a lot of investors would sell. It would immediately lower that cap rate. It would immediately lower that income that investors get. I think some states already do this, like South Carolina, I think has a policy like that, where if you're a non-owner occupant, your property taxes are higher than if you're an owner occupant. And overall, I think that's something that just makes a lot of sense. I think that's something a lot of the local municipalities should be looking into. But for now, everyone, property taxes all across Alabama are really, really low. 0.03% of home value. It just really lowers the cost of owning, whether you're a live-in owner or an investor. And this is a state with huge population growth, top 10 in migration. And if you go to northern Alabama, really high incomes, median income of $100,000 all around Athens and Limestone and Madison County. This could be a good area to buy a house for the long run. This market is correcting right now though, so be mindful of that. Make sure to look at the Reventure 12-month forecast and upgrade to a premium plan at www.reventure.app so you can actually access these forecasts for your city, your state. We cover the whole US housing market. We have our forecast for almost every zip code in America. This forecast has performed very well the last 2 years in terms of predicting prices. At the metro level, we have about a 73% correlation coefficient in predicting prices across metros. So head to www.reventure.app right now and look at the same data that all these Wall Street investors are looking at when they try to buy houses. We actually have quite a few Wall Street companies and home builders now using Reventure app. Not going to say their names, but we see their email addresses. This is data that normally companies would pay thousands and thousands of dollars for. It's available to you as a regular home buyer or amateur investor for a fraction of the price. So go to www.reventure.app right now, upgrade to that premium plan, check out the 12-month forecast for your area. Also check out the population growth data and the cap rate data if you're interested in good areas for the long run.